You did not come this far by accident. Every door that closed in your face, every season that stripped something away from you, every night you lay awake, wondering if anything you believed in was still real. Every single one of those moments was part of something you could not see yet. And today, right now, in this exact moment, I need you to understand something that no one around you may be saying out loud. You passed. You passed the final test. Not almost, not partially. You passed it. Completely. And God's reaction to what you just came through is not what you are expecting. There was a version of you not so long ago who could barely recognize yourself in the mirror. You remember that person. That version of you went to sleep with a heaviness on the chest that no explanation could fully describe. That version of you smiled when it was required, answered questions with enough words to move the conversation forward, and then returned to a silence that felt like it had no floor. You were functioning. You were present in all the places that demanded your presence. But something inside you had gone very quiet, and you were not sure if it was peace or surrender, or simply exhaustion so deep it had become your new normal. And then there is who you are right now. You are the person who stayed. You are the person who did not walk away from the thing you believed in. Even when believing felt like holding on to something invisible with both hands, while everything else around you was solid and loud and moving without you. That contrast between who you were in the middle of it and who you are now is not small. That distance is the proof of something extraordinary. The person who sat in the silence and chose to stay is not the same person who is sitting here right now. You have been changed, not by your own effort alone, but by something working on you from the inside during every season you thought was wasted. I want you to hear something clearly. Chosen ones do not feel chosen most of the time. It is one of the signs that no one talks about enough. When you are in the middle of a season that God is using to prepare you for something significant, it rarely feels like preparation. It feels like abandonment. It feels like punishment. It feels like you missed a turning somewhere, and now you are walking a road that was not meant for you. That feeling, the one that makes you question everything you once believed about your own purpose, is not evidence that you are rejected. It is evidence that you are in the process. There are signs that come with this kind of season. And if you have been carrying more than one of them, I want you to know you are not imagining it. The first sign is that your dreams have been more vivid than usual, not always comforting, but specific, as though something is trying to speak to you through the language your waking mind keeps interrupting. The second sign is that relationships and environments that once felt familiar have started to feel like clothes that no longer fit. You have not changed your address, but something in you has shifted so significantly that the same rooms and the same conversations now carry a weight they did not carry before. The third sign is a recurring awareness of a door, not always literal, but a sense that something is waiting just beyond where you currently stand. And every time you reach for it, something pulls you back into waiting. The fourth sign is that the same message keeps finding you in different forms. A word from a stranger, a sentence in a book you opened by chance, a moment of stillness where something lands in your spirit with a precision that feels impossible to attribute to coincidence. The fifth sign is a frustration you cannot fully explain to anyone around you because it is not about any specific circumstance. It is a deeper restlessness, the kind that does not go away after rest, the kind that tells you there is more, and that more has your name on it. If you recognized yourself in more than two of those signs, I want you to stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is going to change the way you understand everything you have been walking through. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not the person that slipped through the cracks of a divine plan. You are the person that the plan was always moving toward. Every closed door was a redirection. Every season of stillness was a recalibration. Every moment of isolation was a purification that could not have happened in the noise of a life moving at the pace everyone around you expected you to keep. The world will tell you that if nothing visible is happening, nothing real is happening. But that is the language of people who cannot see what God sees. Some of the most significant movements in a chosen one's life take place entirely in the invisible, in the interior, in the places that do not show up on a timeline or a resume or a report that anyone else can evaluate. What has been happening inside you during this season is not nothing. It is everything. It is the work that makes the next chapter possible. And this is the moment I need you to mark in your spirit, not with noise, not with celebration yet, just with a quiet, certain recognition that something is shifting. The test you have been walking through was never designed to destroy you. It was designed to reveal you, to surface the version of you that had to be refined before it could carry the weight of what is coming. You have been asking when. You have been asking why. You have been asking what you did wrong or what you need to do differently. And I am here to tell you that the answer to all of those questions is already arriving. The waiting is not continuing into another season. The preparation is complete. What remains is simply the step forward. Before I take you deeper into what this season truly means, I want to pause for just a moment and share something with you. There is a discovery that connects directly to everything you just recognized in yourself, and I want to give it to you now before we go any further, because it will become an anchor for everything that follows. Scientists who study the brain have identified a specific frequency that operates at the highest level of human consciousness. They call it gamma. And what researchers have found is that chosen ones, people who carry a sense of deeper purpose and heightened awareness, are actually born with stronger gamma activity than the average person. But here is what no one tells you. Long seasons of waiting, of pressure, of carrying more than you were built to carry alone, suppress that frequency over time. The very thing that makes you who you are gets quieter the longer the season lasts. Neuroscientist named Dr. James Rivers, who trained at MIT and has spent over 30 years studying how the brain responds to sound and frequency, developed something called the genius wave. It takes only 7 minutes, and it was designed specifically to restore what long seasons of hardship suppress. If you feel something stir in you when I describe it, the link is already waiting for you in the pinned comment below. We will come back to this in much greater detail very soon. But I did not want to take you through everything that is about to unfold without first giving you that anchor. Now let me take you back into what is truly happening in this season of your life, because the surface of it is not the whole story. There was something you were never supposed to know too early. There is a reason that the most significant assignments given to chosen ones are not revealed at the beginning of the journey. There is a reason the full picture is withheld until the person who carries it has been through enough to hold it without dropping it. And that reason is not cruelty, it is protection. What you are being trusted with now could not have been placed in your hands at the beginning, not because you were not gifted enough, not because you were not willing enough, but because you were not yet formed enough to carry it without it consuming you. The hidden truth that most people walking a chosen path never hear is this. The final test is never the most dramatic one. It is the quietest one. It does not come with a roaring storm that everyone around you can see. It comes in the form of an ordinary Tuesday where nothing appears to be happening, and you have to decide again whether you still believe. It comes in the form of a conversation that does not go the way you needed it to go. It comes in the form of a number in an account that does not reflect the work you have put in. It comes in the form of a silence from heaven that stretches so long you begin to wonder if you misheard everything. That is the final test. Not the spectacular trial, but the sustained one. The one that asks whether you will hold your position when there is nothing visible to hold on to. And you held it. That is what I need you to receive right now, not as a compliment, as a fact. You held your position in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the unremarkable stretch of days that no one was watching and no one was applauding. And that is the test that God responds to, not with silence, with movement. Earlier in this message, I briefly mentioned something. Now I want to give you the full picture. Dr. James Rivers did not begin his research looking for a spiritual answer research. He began it looking for a scientific one. After more than 30 years affiliated with institutions including MIT and research connected to NASA, he arrived at a conclusion that bridges both worlds. The human brain operates on multiple frequency simultaneously. The two most relevant to chosen ones are theta and gamma. Theta waves, which operate between 4 and 8 Hertz, are the frequency of creativity, intuition, deep learning, and the kind of inner knowing that cannot be fully explained to someone who has not experienced it. Children live in theta almost constantly. It is the reason a child can learn a language in months that takes an adult years. It is the reason children are unafraid of imagination. It is the reason they have not yet learned to talk themselves out of what they sense is true. Gamma waves operate at a higher frequency still. They are associated with moments of profound clarity, with the kind of thinking that solves what has been unsolvable, with what researchers sometimes call the eureka state, the flash of insight that arrives not through effort, but through alignment. Mystics across centuries have described states of prayer and surrender that match almost exactly what neuroscientists now document as gamma activity. The ancient language and the modern science are describing the same thing from different sides. What Dr. Rivers discovered is that brainwave entrainment, the process by which the brain synchronizes its own frequency to an external sound signal, can reliably guide the brain into theta and gamma states, specific tones, calibrated with precision, heard through a simple pair of headphones, create an auditory environment that the brain naturally follows. This is not metaphor. This is documented neurological response. And the most important finding from his research is that 7 minutes is the optimal duration. Long enough for the brain to genuinely synchronize. Short enough that it does not produce fatigue or resistance. 7 minutes. The same number that came up in the practice you were invited into a few moments ago in this message is not a coincidence. That silence you sat in was already beginning the process. The genius wave takes that process and completes it with precision. The audio has been engineered specifically to activate the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory consolidation and creative connection, while simultaneously supporting the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making, focus, and the ability to hold a long vision without losing it to daily noise. For chosen ones who have spent extended seasons in hardship, in pressure, in the kind of sustained uncertainty that slowly quiets the inner frequency, this is the restoration that does not require you to have any skill, any prior experience with meditation, or any special discipline. You simply listen. A woman named Sandra used the genius wave during a season that sounds remarkably similar to what you have been walking through. She had been in a period of professional stagnation for nearly 2 years, carrying a sense of purpose that had nowhere to land, waking up with clarity about who she was and confusion about what to do next. Within 3 weeks of using the 7-minute audio daily, she described something she had not expected. Not a dramatic external change first, but an internal one. A quieting of the noise that had been running underneath every decision. A clarity that arrived not as a thought, but as a settled knowing. The external changes followed within the next 60 days. A conversation she had been afraid to initiate. An opportunity that appeared through someone she had not spoken to in over a year. A door that opened without her having to force it. I know some of you are thinking that $39 is not nothing. That is a completely fair response, and I want to acknowledge it honestly. You have already spent so much in this season, not money necessarily, but time, energy, faith, and the kind of emotional reserve that does not replenish quickly. Spending anything right now, even a small amount, requires trust. And trust is something this season may have made more expensive for you. I understand that. The Genius Wave normally carries a price of $49. Today, through the single link in the pinned comment below, it is available to you for just $39. And it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. 90 days. That is not a gesture. That is commitment from Dr. Rivers that what he has built will do what he says it does, or you receive every dollar returned without question. One important thing before you go looking. There are imitation versions of this product circulating in other places. The only version that carries the guarantee and the full engineered audio is through the single link in the pinned comment below. Do not purchase from any other source. The link is there, it has been verified, and it is the only one I am directing you to. This invitation will not remain open indefinitely. The price available today is not the permanent price, and the number of people who can access it at this rate is limited. If something stirred in you when I described what the Genius Wave restores, that stirring is worth listening to. The link is in the pinned comment. It is waiting for you right now. There is something I want to name for you right now. Something that has been sitting inside you for longer than you may have realized. And I want to name it carefully because the words matter. What you have been carrying is not weakness. What you have been carrying is weight. And there is a profound difference between those two things that the world around you may not have been equipped to explain. You have arrived at this moment in your life after a season that has asked more of you than most people around you will ever fully understand. And one of the loneliest parts of walking a chosen path is that the very depth of what you carry makes it difficult to translate into language that the people closest to you can receive. You have tried. You have reached for the words and found that they do not quite capture it. And so you have learned, gradually, to carry it in silence. Not because you gave up on being understood, but because the silence became safer than the risk of being met with. Advice that misses the point entirely. So before I go any further, I want to do something simple. I want to name what you are feeling. Not in general terms, but specifically, the way a person speaks who has been paying close attention. The first thing I want to name is a wave of sadness that arrives without warning and without a clear source. It is not always connected to a specific loss. It rises in the middle of an ordinary moment, while you are driving, while you are washing dishes, while you are sitting in a room full of people who are laughing at something you cannot quite connect to. And when it rises, it carries with it a grief that feels older than the present circumstances, as though you are mourning something that has not yet been named. That wave is real. It is not dysfunction. It is the spirit of a chosen one, recognizing the distance between where they are and where they are called to be, and feeling that distance as something physical. The second thing I want to name is the way familiar places and people have begun to feel heavier than they used to. The home you grew up in, or the friendships that were once effortless, or the routines that once gave you comfort, have taken on a different texture. You walk through them, and something in you registers a kind of strangeness, as though you are slightly out of phase with the environment around you. People who do not understand what you are in the middle of will call this ingratitude, or restlessness, or a mood that will pass. But what it actually is outgrowth. You have grown in ways that the containers around you were not designed to accommodate, and the discomfort you feel is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something is right and that the containers need to change. The third thing I want to name is a recurring awareness of a door that you cannot open. It may not be a literal image in your dreams, though for some of you it is exactly that. For others it is a persistent sense that something significant is waiting just beyond where you currently stand. And every time you move toward it, something delays you, something redirects you, something requires your attention elsewhere. And you have wondered, more than once, whether the door is real or whether you imagined it. The door is real. The reason it has not opened yet is not because it was never meant for you. It is because the person you needed to become in order to walk through it was still being formed on this side of it. The fourth thing I want to name is the pattern of a single message finding you in multiple forms. A sentence spoken by a stranger that lands with unusual precision. A passage in something you were reading for entirely unrelated reasons that stops you mid-thought. A moment of unexpected stillness in which something settles into your spirit with a clarity that feels from somewhere outside your own reasoning. This pattern is not coincidence. When the same message reaches you through different channels at the same time, you are not imagining the coherence of it. You are receiving a signal that has been sent with intention. Beyond those four signs, I want to speak to something even more specific. I want to speak to the insomnia that has visited you during this season. The way 3 in the morning has become a time you know too well, not by choice but because something inside you will not settle into rest the way it once could. I want to speak to the loneliness that exists even in the company of people who love you. The kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with feeling unseen at the level that matters most. I want to speak to the specific pain of feeling wronged and having no clean place to put that injury, of knowing that something was taken from you, or withheld from you, or misrepresented about you, and having to decide what to do with that knowledge in the absence of any visible justice. And I want to speak to the exhaustion of being misunderstood by people who are not cruel, who simply do not have the framework to comprehend the kind of path you are walking. All of that is real, and I am not going to rush past it to get to the hopeful part, because the hopeful part only means something if the hard part has been fully acknowledged first. But here is what I also need you to hear, and I need you to receive this not as a reframe designed to minimize what you have been through, but as a genuine redefinition of what waiting actually is. You have been reading your season as punishment, as delay, as evidence that you are somehow behind a schedule that everyone else seems to be keeping except you. But what if the language you have been using to describe your season is simply the wrong language? What if waiting is not the absence of movement, but a specific kind of movement that operates below the surface, invisible to observation but entirely real in its effects? There is a difference, a significant one, between being overlooked and being positioned. Being overlooked means you were present, you were worthy, and you were passed over by someone who could not see your value. That is a real experience and it carries real pain. But being positioned means something entirely different. Being positioned means you have been placed, deliberately, in a specific location for a specific duration. Because the ground beneath you is being prepared to hold the weight of what is coming next. You cannot always tell the difference between the two from the inside. They can feel identical when you are standing in the middle of them. But the outcome is not identical. One ends in the bitterness of what was denied. The other ends in the astonishment of what was being prepared. You have not been overlooked. You have been positioned. The years that felt like they were subtracting from your story were not subtracting. They were building the foundation that the next chapter requires. Every relationship that fell away was clearing space. Every resource that did not come through was redirecting your dependence toward something more reliable. Every season of isolation was deepening the interior life that your assignment is going to require you to draw from daily. And God's reaction to what you have just come through is not disappointment. It is not the silence of a heaven that forgot you existed. God's reaction is what I want you to begin to open yourself to receiving, because it is already in motion, and it is moving in your direction with a specificity that is going to surprise you. If anything I have named today has found you, if any of these words have landed in a place that felt like recognition rather than information, I want to invite you to do something simple before we continue. If this message has reached something in you that needed to be reached, consider passing it forward. Let it travel to the next chosen one who is still in the middle of their unnamed season, still carrying the weight without a language for it, still wondering if anyone can see what they are going through. Pressing like on this message is not a small thing. It is how the message finds the next person who needs it. Leaving a word in the comments, even a single word, is how you mark that you were here, that you showed up for yourself today, and that you are part of a larger community of chosen ones all over the world, arriving at this same recognition at the same moment. Share this with someone who has been struggling to find stillness in a noisy season, someone whose waiting has gone unnamed for too long. And if something in you wants to pass a blessing forward to the next person who finds their way to this message, there is a way to do that through the link in the pinned comment. Choose to remain part of this community by subscribing, not as a platform action, but as a chosen one, saying yes to continuing this conversation with others who understand what you have been carrying. Now, if what I have named today found you in the exact place where you have been standing, I want to invite you to type the word "ready" in the comment below. Not as a performance, as a declaration, a statement from you to yourself and to the community of chosen ones reading alongside you that you recognize this season for what it actually is, and that you are ready to receive what comes next. What was taken from you during this season was real. I need to begin there, because everything that follows will only carry the weight it deserves if we first sit honestly inside what the years of waiting have actually cost you. Not what they built in you, not what they were preparing you for, not the beautiful language of refinement and purpose, but the raw, unadorned reality of what was lost, what was delayed, what was quietly surrendered in the long stretch between the promise and the fulfillment. There are relationships that could have been built during these years that were not built. Connections that might have grown into something sustaining and mutual. Friendships that might have deepened into the kind of bond that carries you through decades. A partnership that might have had more years to develop if the season had not asked so much of your interior life that there was little left over for the exterior one. You were not absent from those opportunities because you did not care. You were depleted. You were carrying something invisible and heavy, and the energy required to sustain deep relational presence was being drawn from a reserve that the season had already strained. That is a real loss. The relationships that did not form, the ones that came close but could not quite take root in the soil of that particular season. Those absences are worth grieving. There is a career trajectory that could have looked different. Not necessarily more prestigious, but more aligned with the person you knew yourself to be at your core. There were moments where a door appeared to be opening and then did not open, where an opportunity moved within reach and then moved away, where a version of your professional life that felt genuinely connected to your purpose seemed almost tangible, and then receded back into the fog of waiting. And you watched people around you, people with less clarity about who they were and less depth in their understanding of their own calling, move forward into visible progress while you remained in a season that produced no resume entries and no visible evidence of advancement. That is not a small thing to absorb. That kind of comparison is one of the quietest forms of suffering a chosen one endures, and it deserves to be named as such rather than immediately spiritualized into something more comfortable. There was a freedom to speak your dreams out loud that you lost somewhere in the middle of this season. In the early days before, the waiting stretched into years. You could describe what you believed was coming with a kind of unguarded openness. You could say it without immediately bracing for the look that arrives on someone's face when they are trying to be supportive but cannot quite hide their skepticism. But the longer the season lasted without visible confirmation, the more you learned to keep the largest parts of your vision internal. You stopped saying certain things out loud, not because you stopped believing them entirely, but because the cost of saying them and receiving nothing back but polite silence or quiet doubt became a cost you were no longer willing to pay, and so you carried it alone. The vision became something you held privately, tending to it in the interior without the sustaining oxygen of being witnessed and affirmed. That loss, the loss of the freedom to be fully known in your hoping, is one of the most specific griefs of a chosen path, and I will not rush past it. And then there is the thing that is perhaps the most difficult to admit, even to yourself. This season at some point began to take your faith in yourself, not your faith in God necessarily. Though for some of you that too has been more complicated than you have been able to say out loud. But your faith in your own perception. Your confidence in your own ability to read what was true about your life and your calling. You have wondered, in the quiet of more than one night, whether you were wrong about all of it, whether the sense of purpose you have carried since you were young was something you invented to make sense of experiences that were simply difficult rather than significant. Whether the feeling of being set apart was a story you told yourself rather than a reality that God had authored. That doubt, the specific doubt that turns inward and questions your own capacity to know what is real, is one of the heaviest things a chosen one carries. And the fact that you kept showing up anyway, that you kept holding the position even when the doubt was loudest, is what I want to return to. But not yet. First, I want to sit with you here a little longer. There is a man in the ancient story whose name you know. His name is Joseph. And I want to speak about Joseph, not the way Joseph is usually spoken about in the triumphant reading, where the suffering is acknowledged briefly before moving quickly to the coat of many colors, and the second in command position in Egypt, and the brothers bowing at his feet. I want to speak about Joseph in the pit, specifically in the moment after the pit, when he has been pulled out not to be restored but to be sold. When the people who should have protected him, the people who shared his blood and his household, and the same father, looked at him as a commodity rather than a brother, and exchanged him for 20 pieces of silver. I want you to sit in that moment with Joseph, not in Egypt where he eventually thrives, but on the road between Canaan and Egypt, walking in a direction he did not choose, toward a life he did not ask for, in the company of strangers who did not see him as a person with a name and a dream and a father who loved him. Joseph did not have the end of the story when he was in the middle of it. He did not walk that road knowing that Pharaoh was waiting. He did not endure Potiphar's house with the comfort of a preview of the interpretation he would one day give to a dream that would save a nation. He walked in the middle of it the same way you have been walking in the middle of yours, without the full picture, without the guarantee made visible, without the timeline posted anywhere he could read it. He walked forward in a season that had taken everything that marked him as significant and left him with nothing but the interior knowing that had carried. And I want to name what that cost Joseph, because it is the same thing it has been costing you. It cost him the years of relationship with his father that were not lived. It cost him the young adulthood that might have unfolded in the warmth of a home rather than in the uncertainty of slavery and then imprisonment. It cost him the ordinary accumulation of a life that other young men his age were living without interruption. Those losses were real. They were not erased by what came afterward. They were real, and they were significant, and Joseph carried them even in his glory. Even when he wept in front of his brothers in Egypt, decades after the pit, the tears were not only tears of reunion. They were tears that held the full weight of everything the journey between then and that moment had contained. I tell you this because I want you to know that honoring what this season has cost you is not a failure of faith. It is not a sign that you do not trust the plan. You can grieve the real losses of a chosen path and still hold the truth that the path is leading somewhere. You can acknowledge what the years have taken without denying what they have also been building. Both things are true simultaneously. The loss is real, and the positioning is real. And sitting inside both of those truths at the same time, without collapsing into one and abandoning the other, is one of the most spiritually mature things a chosen one can do. You have not come through this season without scars, and you are not required to pretend otherwise. What you are invited into is not a denial of the cost. It is a reorientation toward what the cost was. Purchasing, even in the seasons when the price felt entirely too high, and the purchase entirely invisible. The pain that Joseph carried did not disqualify his destiny, and neither does yours. But I want to take you somewhere new now. Somewhere that gives you a different vocabulary for what you have been living inside. Because sometimes the reason a season feels unbearable is not that it is too hard, but that we have been describing it with the wrong words. And when the language changes, something in the understanding shifts with it. There is a word that comes from the ancient Greek that I want to give you today. The word is kairos, and the reason I want to give it to you is that the English language and the modern framework most of us were handed for understanding time does not have a precise equivalent for what it describes. In English, time is time. It moves in one direction at a measurable pace. You can clock it, schedule it, lose it, waste it, or run out of it. Time in the modern understanding is essentially a container, and your life is what you manage to pour into that container before it empties. But the ancient Greek understanding held two entirely different concepts of time simultaneously. The first was chronos. Chronos is clock time. It is the kind of time that measures how long something takes. It is the calendar on your wall, and the hours between midnight and morning, and the years that accumulate whether or not anything significant appears to be happening inside them. Chronos is the time that felt like it was passing without purpose during your longest seasons of waiting. It is the time you were counting when you told yourself it had been too long, when you measured the distance between the promise and the present and felt the gap as something almost physical. But Kairos is something different entirely. Kairos is not the measurement of duration. Kairos is the arrival of the right moment. It is the concept of a time that is not simply the next unit on the clock, but the specific moment that was always appointed for a specific thing to happen. Kairos does not move at a pace you can predict or prepare for by watching the calendar. Kairos arrives when the conditions are aligned, when the person is formed, when the ground is prepared, when everything that needed to converge has converged. And you cannot rush Kairos by working harder inside Chronos. You cannot accelerate it by wanting it more intensely or by doing more of the right things. Kairos arrives in its own timing, and the only response to it that makes sense is not frantic effort, but a particular kind of readiness. And here is what I need you to understand about the relationship between Chronos and Kairos in your specific story. Every day of Chronos' time that felt like nothing was happening was actually Kairos' time being assembled. The waiting that felt like absence was the appointed time being constructed. The silence that felt like abandonment was the conditions of your Kairos being prepared with a precision that your Chronos measurements could never capture. You were not behind schedule. You were not outside the plan. You were inside the very process by which the appointed moment is made ready. The clarification I want to make here is important. This is not a reward for effort. This is not a prize given to the most patient, or the most faithful, or the most spiritually disciplined. Kairos is not something you earn. It is something you enter. And the entering of it is not the result of your performance during the waiting. It is the result of an appointment that was set before you were aware of the season. The waiting did not make you worthy of the moment. The moment was always coming. The waiting was simply the duration in which you were being made ready to inhabit it fully rather than to be overwhelmed by it. Now I want to give you a second word, a second ancient concept that layers underneath Kairos and deepens it. This word is the hour of revelation. It is the moment that the ancient texts describe as the time of unveiling, when what has been hidden is finally made visible, when what was true all along becomes undeniable, when the character in the story finally understands why they had to endure the things they endured. The hour of revelation is not simply a moment of blessing. It is a moment of comprehension. It is the moment where the pattern becomes visible, where the suffering that had no apparent meaning suddenly reveals its architecture, where the person standing in the middle of their own story finally sees the design that was present in the difficulty all along. This is the hour you are entering, not eventually. Now, the reason the signs have been intensifying, the reason the same message has been finding you in multiple forms, the reason something in your spirit has been more alert and more awake in recent days, even when your circumstances have not visibly changed, is that the hour of revelation is not something that happens in a single dramatic moment. It begins as a gradual lifting of the veil. It begins with the arrival of language that names what the suffering was for. It begins with the recognition that what felt like the end of something was actually the border of something entirely different. And what is being revealed to you in this hour is not just what is coming next in your external circumstances. What is being revealed is who you actually are. Not who you were before the season, not who you are going to be when it is over, but who you have become inside it, in the parts of you that were formed in the silence and the pressure and the sustained unknowing. The person who entered this season and the person standing at the threshold of the hour of revelation are not the same person. And the revelation that is unfolding is, at its deepest level, the revelation of that transformation. There was a final pain in this season. I want to name it one more time before we cross the threshold together. The final pain was the pain of not knowing why, of enduring something significant without the comfort of understanding what it was for, of carrying the weight without the label. That pain has a name now. It is called the calling. Every moment of that unnamed suffering was the pressure by which the calling was being shaped inside you. The confusion was not a sign that you were lost. It was the specific disorientation that accompanies the formation of someone who is being made ready for something that has not existed before in the form it is taking in your life. The Kairos appointed for you does not look like what it looked like for anyone else who came before you, because you are not a repetition of anyone who came before you. Your hour of revelation will have its own specific character, its own specific sequence, its own specific unfolding, and it is already beginning. The veil is already lifting. The architecture of what you have been walking through is already becoming visible at its edges. Now I want to gently return to something I mentioned earlier in this message, because it connects directly to both of these concepts in a way that is too specific to pass over. The genius wave, what Dr. James Rivers developed after 30 years of research, is essentially a technology designed to bring the brain into alignment with its own appointed frequency. When a chosen one has spent extended seasons inside Chronos time, carrying what cannot be carried indefinitely without cost, the gamma and theta frequencies that are native to their design become suppressed. The brain that was built for Kairos moments, for the kind of clarity that arrives at the hour of revelation, gets worn down by the sustained pressure of Chronos waiting. What the Genius Wave does in 7 minutes is restore the brain to the frequency it was designed to operate at, not artificially, not through chemical alteration, through sound, through the precise calibration of tones that the brain recognizes and follows into alignment. It is, in the language of what we have been discussing, a tool that prepares the interior landscape for the Kairos that is already arriving. If that feels relevant to where you are right now, the link is in the pinned comment below. There is no pressure in how I say that. It is simply there waiting, the same way the appointed time has been waiting. You will know if it is for you, because the hour of revelation that is beginning in your life is not arriving into the same interior that endured the hardest seasons. It is arriving into someone who has been formed, refined, repositioned, and is now standing at the threshold of understanding in a way that changes not just the circumstances, but the entire framework through which the circumstances are interpreted. What God has ordained delay cannot cancel. And what is ordained for you is not arriving late. It is arriving exactly on time, in the precise moment that was always appointed for it. Something is already moving. I want you to feel that before I name it, because there is a difference between being told that change is coming and actually sensing it in the place where you carry what matters most. You have been in a season where very little felt like it was moving, where the landscape of your life appeared to hold its same shape day after day, while something inside you grew increasingly certain that it was not supposed to stay that way. That tension between the interior certainty and the exterior stillness is one of the most difficult things a chosen one navigates. But I want you to understand something about that tension now. It was not a sign of contradiction. It was a sign of pressure. And pressure, when it has been building long enough in the right direction, does not produce stagnation. It produces release. The release has begun. And I want to name 3 specific areas where you are going to feel it first. Because chosen ones who are not paying attention to the right things can miss the early movement of what God is doing simply because it does not arrive in the form they were expecting. The first signs of the shift are rarely dramatic. They are quiet, specific, and easy to explain away if you are not watching for them with the right kind of attention. The first area is your relationships. And I want to describe this carefully because what is about to happen in your relational world may initially feel like loss before it reveals itself as preparation. Some of the people who have been part of your daily landscape are going to begin to create distance, not always with conflict, not always with a clear reason, but with a gradual withdrawal that you will sense before it becomes visible. And your first instinct may be to pursue, to repair, to ask what changed. I want to invite you to pause before that instinct takes over, because not every departure in this season is a rupture. Some of it is completion. Some of the people in your life have carried you as far as they were assigned to carry you, and the grace they were meant to offer you has been fully given. Their withdrawal is not rejection. It is release. It is the relational landscape making space for what is coming next. And what is coming next in your relational world is specific. People are going to appear in your life in the coming season with a precision that will be difficult to attribute to coincidence. They will arrive at the right moment, carrying the right conversation, opening the right door, or simply offering the right quality of presence that your soul has been starving for during the long stretch of isolation. These connections will not feel like the effortful maintenance of relationship that were already straining under the weight of misalignment. They will feel like recognition, like arriving somewhere you were always meant to be, like finding people who speak the language of your interior life without requiring translation. The second area where the shift is already moving is your sense of purpose. And I want to be specific about this too, because the confusion about purpose that has followed you through this season has not been a sign of vagueness in what you carry. It has been a sign of the gap between what you are called to and the conditions in which you have been asked to wait. When the Kairos begins to arrive, when the appointed time moves from assembly into activation, that confusion does not typically resolve itself through a sudden, overwhelming revelation. It resolves itself through one clear, small step, one action that presents itself with unusual clarity in a field of previously murky options. One conversation, one decision, one direction that does not require you to force your certainty into shape, because the certainty simply arrives already formed. You are going to experience that clarity. It may come in a moment of stillness. It may come through a word spoken by someone who has no idea how precisely it lands. It may come through a door that opens in a direction you had stopped looking. But when it comes, you will recognize it not by its volume, but by its quality. There will be a settledness to it that is different from the anxious decision-making of the season you are coming out of. There will be a peace underneath it that does not depend on all the other circumstances being resolved first. That peace is the signature of a Kairos step, a step that belongs to the appointed time rather than to the striving of Chronos effort. What you are called to do next will not require you to become someone other than who you have become through this season. It will require exactly who you have become. Every quality that was developed in the waiting, the patience, the depth, the capacity to hold uncertainty without collapsing, the interior life that was built in the silence, every single one of those qualities is precisely what the next chapter demands. You were not being held back from your purpose. You were being formed into the specific shape that your purpose requires. The third area where the shift is moving is in the domain of resources and opportunity. And this is where I want to speak to something very particular that many chosen ones have been conditioned to believe about how provision arrives. You have been taught, by experience if not by explicit instruction, that resources come through striving. That opportunity is something you fight for, compete for, position yourself for through relentless effort and strategic visibility. And there is a time and a place for diligent work. I am not asking you to abandon your discipline, but I want you to understand that the provision coming in this season is going to feel different from what you have known before. It is not going to arrive as the reward for the most strenuous effort. It is going to arrive as what is simply yours, being returned to you in the season of your kairos. There are resources that have been withheld, not because you did not earn them, but because the timing of their arrival was being coordinated with the timing of your readiness. There are opportunities that could not have been placed in your hands in an earlier season because you would not yet have had the interior architecture to steward them without being consumed by them. What is coming is not a windfall. It is alignment. It is the moment where what belongs to you and where you are intersect in the way they were always appointed to intersect. You will not have to fight for it the way you fought for things in previous seasons. You will have to receive it. And receiving, for someone who has spent years in the posture of striving, is its own kind of practice. Now I want to speak to the emotions you may be navigating as you feel this shift beginning. Because the movement of Kairos after a long season of Chronos waiting does not always feel the way you imagined it would feel when you were in the middle of the hardest days. You imagined perhaps that it would feel like relief from the moment it arrived. You imagined the weight lifting cleanly and immediately. But what many chosen ones experience at the threshold of the shift is something more complex than simple relief. There is relief, yes, but there is also a tenderness in the places that were most strained. There is an emotional surfacing of things that were held underwater during the season because there was not enough safety to feel them fully. There is sometimes an unexpected grief, a mourning of the years that passed under the weight of waiting, that arrives precisely at the moment the waiting begins to end. Do not be alarmed by that complexity. Do not interpret the tenderness as a sign that something is still wrong. It is the natural response of a person who has been carrying more than was comfortable for longer than was comfortable, finally encountering enough safety to put some of it down. Let it surface. Let it be felt. The tears that come at the threshold of the shift are not tears of continued suffering. They are the release of what the suffering stored. And here is what I want you to hold alongside all of that. You are not moving into this new season alone. All across the world, right now, other chosen ones are standing at this same threshold, feeling the same stirring, sensing the same shift, beginning in their relational world, their sense of purpose, and the domain of their resources and opportunities. You are part of a movement that is larger than your individual story. And every chosen one who wakes up to what is happening in this season adds something to what is being built collectively. Chosen ones do not simply receive what they have been given. They carry it forward and multiply it. Every person who finds this message and recognizes themselves in it becomes part of something larger than any single waiting season could contain. If you are feeling the ground shift beneath you right now, let this message travel. Press like as an act of choosing to be part of that movement. Drop a word in the comments as a signal to other chosen ones that they are not watching this alone. Share this with someone who is still in the thick of their waiting. Someone who needs to know that the ground is already shifting, even when it cannot yet be seen. Stay at this table by subscribing, not as a platform action, but as a chosen one committing to remain in the company of others who are waking up together. And if you feel moved to sow into the ground that grows this for the next person in line, the link to do that is in the pinned comment. You are a builder now, and builders do not wait to be certain before they lay the next stone. They lay it because they can see the blueprint. If you can feel the 3 areas I have named beginning to move in your life, type the word receive in the comments below, not as a wish, as a declaration that you are open, that you are ready, and that you recognize the shift that is already underway. The ground that began shifting beneath you in those 3 areas is not shifting towards something abstract. It is shifting towards something with your name on it, your specific name, the one that was written before the season began, and that the season itself has been in the process of revealing. And I want to take you somewhere particular now, somewhere that requires you to be fully present and fully still, because what I am about to give you is not information to be processed from a distance, is a recognition to be received from the inside. You came into this season as one version of yourself. You are leaving it as another. And the distance between those 2 versions of you is not small, even if the external markers of your life have not yet caught up with the internal transformation that has already taken place. The person who entered the waiting carried certain things that the person standing at the threshold of this moment no longer needs to carry. And the person standing here now carries certain things that the person who entered the waiting had not yet developed the interior capacity to hold. That exchange, that specific transaction between what was surrendered and what was formed, is the signature of a chosen one who has completed something significant. And the person you have become deserves to be named, not with a generic word of encouragement, not with a category that could be applied to anyone who has endured difficulty and remained standing, but with a specific name that carries the exact weight you walked through and reflects precisely what you have been formed into on the other side of it. The name I want to give you today is this: you are a cycle breaker. I want you to receive that not as a motivational phrase designed to make you feel better about a hard season. I want you to receive it as an accurate description of what has actually happened in your life during the years you have been walking through. A cycle breaker is not simply someone who survived something difficult. A cycle breaker is someone whose willingness to endure a season that the people around them could not fully see or understand has permanently altered the trajectory of what comes after them, not just after them in time, but after them in lineage, in legacy, in the invisible inheritance that passes from one generation to the next through the choices made in the seasons no one was watching. The patterns that were running through your history before you arrived at this season, the cycles of deferred promise, of potential that never quite arrived at its fullness, of dreams that passed from one person to the next without ever being fully inhabited, of lack and striving, and the particular exhaustion of people who carry great capacity in circumstances that were never designed to support it. Those cycles did not continue through you. They stopped at you, and I want to be precise about what that means, because it is easy to hear that language and turn it into something that sounds heroic from the outside, but feels hollow from the inside if it is not grounded in the specific reality of what actually happened. You did not break the cycle by being stronger than everyone who came before you. You did not break it by being more faithful, more disciplined, or more spiritually advanced. You broke it because you were chosen for this specific assignment in this specific generation. And because, even in the moments when you did not feel chosen, even in the seasons when chosen felt like the cruelest possible description of what you were experiencing, you held your position. You stayed in the middle of the thing. You did not let bitterness become your permanent residence even when it came to visit. And it did come to visit. You and I both know that. You did not let cynicism replace the depth of what you carried, even when cynicism would have been so much more comfortable. You did not let the silence of heaven convince you that heaven was absent, even when the silence stretched so long that the distinction between absence and presence became difficult to articulate. That holding of position, that sustained choosing to remain faithful to something invisible when the visible evidence was thin or entirely absent, is the act that breaks a cycle. It is not dramatic. It does not look like victory from the outside while it is happening. From the outside, it can look indistinguishable from being stuck. But from the inside, and from the vantage point of what comes after, it is the most significant work a chosen one can do within the span of a single lifetime. What you absorbed in this season, the loneliness, the unanswered questions, the financial strain, the relational losses, the particular grief of carrying a dream that had nowhere to land, the slow erosion of the certainty you began the season with, all of that was absorbed by you, and it did not pass through you into what comes after you. The loneliness you carried did not teach loneliness to what follows you. The lack you navigated did not inscribe lack into the inheritance of what comes after you. The silence you endured did not become the spiritual atmosphere of the next generation. You interrupted the transmission. You stood in the middle of the current and refused, even without always knowing you were refusing, to conduct it forward. That is what a cycle breaker does, and that is what you have done. Now I want to take you into something experiential. I want to guide you through a visualization that is going to ask you to be genuinely present, not as an observer watching yourself from the outside, but as someone who actually inhabits the scene I am about to describe. Stay with me here and let yourself be fully inside it. Picture yourself standing at a threshold, not a grand architectural threshold with dramatic lighting and symbolic imagery. A simple one, the kind that exists between an ordinary room and another ordinary room, worn at the edges, familiar in the way that things we have stood near for a long time become familiar. You are standing exactly at the line. One foot is still on the floor of the season you are leaving. The other is not yet fully on the floor of what you are entering, and you are pausing there, not because you are afraid of what is ahead, but because you are wise enough to know that some moments deserve to be fully felt before they become the past. Now I want you to turn around, look back at the space you are leaving, and I want you to look at it without the filter of either grief or relief. Just look at it clearly, the way you would look at a landscape from a high enough elevation that you could finally see its full shape. See the length of it. See how far it actually extended. See the specific geography of the hard places, the valleys that went on longer than you thought you could sustain, the stretches of terrain where nothing visible was growing but where the roots beneath the surface were going deeper than you knew. See the nights. See the specific texture of the silence. See the version of you that walked into that space, younger in ways that have nothing to do with age, carrying certainties about different things than you are certain about now, holding hope in a different way than you hold it now. Not less real, but less refined. See what that version of you carried. See how they carried it, and now see how far they brought you. From the place they entered to the threshold where you are standing right now is a distance that deserves to be honored before you turn away from it. Now, look at what you are setting down at the threshold. Not what was taken from you. You cannot carry that forward or leave it behind because what was taken does not belong to you to place, but what you are choosing to release. The weight of the questions that never received the answers you needed during the season. The accumulated heaviness of enduring misunderstanding from people who were not equipped to understand. The posture of bracing. The way your body and your spirit learned to prepare for disappointment before it arrived, because disappointment had arrived often enough that preparation felt like the only reasonable response. The smallness you took on in certain rooms and certain relationships, because making yourself smaller felt safer than the exposure of being fully seen. Set all of that down here, at the line. You do not need to carry it into what comes next. The season it belongs to is behind you. Now face forward, and do not strain to see the full landscape of what is ahead. You are not meant to see all of it from the threshold. You are meant to see enough to take the first step. Enough to know that the quality of the light on the other side of this line is different from the quality of the light in the season behind you. Enough to recognize that what is waiting on the other side of this threshold is not foreign to you, not a life that belongs to a different person or requires you to become someone you have never been. It is the life that has been being assembled for the specific person you have become through the specific journey you have just completed. And then I want you to notice something that perhaps you have not fully registered yet. You are already standing at the threshold, not approaching it, not planning to arrive at it sometime in the near future, already there, already at the line. The step forward is not a long journey from here. It is simply the placement of the foot that is already lifted. Now let me speak something over you, not as performance, as a genuine blessing spoken from this voice into your spirit, in the quiet that opens between what has been named and what is coming. May the clarity that formed in you through the silence become a light that others can navigate by, not because you hold it up for them, but because it simply emanates from who you are now. May the depth that was built in the isolation become the very quality that draws to you the specific people who were always meant to walk alongside you in the next chapter. May every resource and opportunity that belongs to this season arrive with the ease that characterizes things that were always appointed rather than fought for. May the dreams that went quiet during the hardest years here find their voice again in the space that is now wide open for them. May the relationships coming toward you carry the specific quality of recognition, the kind where you do not have to explain yourself from the beginning, because the connection already knows you at the level that matters. May the grief of what this season cost you be met with a restoration so particular and so precise that even the losses are redeemed in ways you could not have designed for yourself. And may every ordinary day of the season ahead carry within it some small evidence of the faithfulness that was operating in the season just ended, so that gratitude becomes not an effort, but a natural and continuous response to a life that is finally moving in the direction it was always appointed to move. You are a cycle breaker. What you have broken will not reform behind you. What comes after, you will move in a different current because of what you chose to do in the middle of the season that no one fully saw. That is not a small thing. That is not simply your personal victory. That is a permanent alteration in the direction of a lineage. And it began with you showing up, staying, and refusing to let the waiting be the last word. The blessing that was just spoken over you is not a conclusion. It is an orientation. It is the compass that points you toward what I want to give you now, which is something practical, something grounded, something that takes everything we have been building together in this message and translates it into the specific texture of your daily life in the season ahead. Because chosen ones do not simply receive revelation and then return unchanged to the same patterns of thought and action that define the waiting season. Chosen ones receive revelation and then move. And the movement I want to describe for you is not vague or general. It is specific, and it is already available to you right now, in this moment, before anything in your external circumstances has visibly shifted. There are 3 areas of your life that are in the process of being transformed, not eventually. Now, and I want to walk you through each one with enough specificity that when you encounter the early signs of what I am describing, you will recognize them for what they are, rather than explaining them away with the habits of perception that belong to the season you are leaving. The first area is your relationships. And I want to begin here because relationships are where the transformation of a cycle breaker is most immediately visible, both to themselves and to the world around them. What is about to happen in your relational world has a specific character, and I want you to understand it clearly so that you can navigate it with intention rather than simply reacting to it as it unfolds. Old relationships are going to leave on their own. I said something similar in an earlier part of this message, but I want to go deeper into it now because the experience of it deserves more than a single mention. Some of these departures will be gentle, a gradual fading of contact, a natural reduction in the frequency of conversation, a mutual and unspoken acknowledgement that the season of that connection has completed itself. Others will be less gentle. There will be some relationships that end with friction, with a misunderstanding that does not resolve itself, with a conflict that surfaces what was always underneath the surface of the connection and makes it impossible to continue as though it was not there. And your temptation in those moments will be to fight to preserve what is ending, to pursue the repair, to make yourself smaller or more accommodating, in order to hold on to something that the season has already released. I want to invite you to resist that temptation, not coldly, not without grief, but with the understanding that the relationships completing themselves in this season are not completing themselves because of your failure. They are completing themselves because they were never designed to cross with you into what comes next. The people who are meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your life are not the people you have to convince to stay. They are the people who recognize you without requiring you to explain yourself. They are the people who arrive at the right moment with a quality of presence that feels like coming home rather than like a negotiation. And they are coming. The new people entering your relational world in this season will carry specific qualities that you will notice immediately. They will be people who operate at the frequency you have been developing through the waiting. People who understand depth without requiring it to be justified. People who have been through their own seasons of refinement and carry the specific kind of gentleness that only comes from having been in genuine difficulty and having chosen integrity over bitterness on the other side of it. These connections will not require the effortful maintenance of relationships that were tilltugzer by proximity or obligation. They will sustain themselves through genuine recognition and mutual investment in what each person is becoming. Pay attention to the people who appear in unexpected contexts in the coming weeks and months. Pay attention to the conversations that open with an unusual quality of honesty. Pay attention to the connections that feel, from their earliest moments, like they belong to the chapter you are entering, rather than the chapter you are leaving. These are not coincidences. These are the relational kairos moments, arriving in the form of specific human beings who were appointed to find you at exactly this point in your story. The second area is your sense of purpose. And I want to be very specific here about what the transformation of purpose looks and feels like for a cycle breaker emerging from an extended season of waiting, because it does not always match the dramatic clarity that people imagine when they think about finally knowing what they are meant to do. The question that has been running underneath your daily life for the length of this season, the question of what you are supposed to be doing, what direction you are supposed to be moving in, what the next concrete step actually is, that question is going to answer itself. And the way it answers itself is going to feel almost anticlimactic in the best possible sense. It is not going to arrive as a thunderclap of overwhelming revelation. It is going to arrive as a single clear step that presents itself with a quietness and a certainty that you have not felt about a direction in a very long time. You will know it is the right step, not because it is the most logical one or the most strategically sound one, according to the frameworks of the season you are leaving. You will know it because it carries the specific quality of peace that belongs to a kairos moment. It will not require you to force your confidence into shape around it. The confidence will simply be there, settled and unhurried, underneath the step before you even begin to take it. And the step will require exactly the person you have become through this season. Not the person you were before the waiting began. Not an idealized future version of yourself that you have not yet grown into. Exactly who you are right now, with the depth and the patience and the interior life and the specific kind of wisdom that only comes from having held your position through the season no one else fully saw. Take the step when it presents itself with that quality of settled clarity. Do not wait for all the surrounding circumstances to resolve themselves before you move. The cycle breaker moves into the appointed step while the full picture is still assembling itself, trusting that the ground will be solid under the next foot, because the appointment that governs the step is more reliable than the certainty of any surrounding circumstance. The third area is resources and opportunity, and I want to speak to this one with particular care, because it is the area where the habits of the waiting season are most likely to create interference with what is now available to you. During the long season, you learn to manage scarcity. You learn to make do with less, to stretch what was available, to calibrate your expectations downward in order to protect yourself from the repeated disappointment of reaching that for something that did not come through. Those skills served you during the season that required them, but they are going to need to be consciously laid down at the threshold of what comes next. Because what is coming in the domain of resources and opportunity is not going to arrive through the striving posture that you developed in the season of scarcity. It is going to arrive through a posture of reception, of aligned action rather than anxious effort, of moving in the direction of what is being opened rather than forcing what is still closed. The opportunities that belong to this season of your life will carry a specific quality that distinguishes them from the opportunities of previous seasons. They will open with an ease that feels almost suspicious to someone who has spent years fighting for every forward movement. They will come through channels you were not monitoring. They will arrive through people you were not strategically cultivating. They will present themselves in a form that requires your willingness to receive rather than your capacity to compete. What is yours is already moving toward you. The resources that belong to this chapter of your story are not waiting on the other side of one more achievement, or one more qualification, or one more proof of your readiness. They are moving in your direction right now, coordinated by the same appointment that has been governing every other aspect of this season. Your part is not to chase them. Your part is to remain in alignment with the frequency of who you have become, to take the clear steps as they present themselves, and to hold your hands open rather than clenched. You are not going to have to fight for what belongs to you in this season. You are going to have to receive it, and receiving, after a long season of striving, is going to feel like the most radical act of faith you have ever practiced. But it is the act that belongs to this moment. It is the posture of a cycle breaker who knows that the breaking of the old pattern includes the breaking of the old posture, and who is willing to stand in the new one even before the evidence of its fruit is fully visible. The three areas are already in motion. Your relationships, your purpose, and your resources are all being reorganized around the appointment that is now arriving. You do not have to make all of this happen. You have to be present for it, awake to it, and willing to move when the movement is clear. Everything I have given you in this message, every word that found you, every recognition that landed in a place that felt more like memory than new information, every moment where something shifted in the way you understood your own season, all of it has been moving toward this. Not toward a conclusion, toward a crossing. And I want to sit with you here for a moment before you step fully into what is on the other side of this conversation, because you deserve more than a quick send-off after everything you have carried to get to this point. You showed up today. I do not want to move past that without honoring it. You showed up when you did not have to. You gave your attention to something that required you to be present in a way that most of what the world offers you does not require. You sat with the hard parts without running from them. You allowed the naming of things that have been living in you unnamed for longer than was comfortable. And that act of showing up, of being willing to be seen and named and addressed at the level that actually matters, is not a small thing. It is, in fact, one of the most courageous things a person can do in a season where the easier choice is to stay numb and keep moving. I want to thank you for that, not as a formality, as a genuine acknowledgement from one voice to one listener that what happened here today between the words and your spirit was real, and that it belongs to both of us now. Now I want to do something with you before we close. I want to invite you into a final exercise, one that is simple in its form and significant in what it releases. And I need you to be fully present for it, not performing it, but actually doing it. I want you to imagine, right now, that everything you have been carrying through this season is gathered in your hands. Not as an abstract concept, but as something with actual weight. Feel the specific heaviness of it, the unanswered questions, the grief of the relationships that did not make it through, the weariness of the nights that went on too long, the residue of the moments where you were wronged and had nowhere clean to put the injury, the fatigue of believing in something invisible for longer than felt sustainable, the quiet shame of the dreams you stopped saying out loud, the loneliness that existed even in the company of people who loved you. Let all of it gather into your hands right now and feel its full weight without flinching from it. Now I want you to picture the threshold you visited earlier in this message, the simple line between what was and what is coming. And I want you to walk to it one more time, not to cross it yet, but to stand at it with your hands full of everything you have been carrying. And now I want you to set it down, not because it did not matter, not because the pain was not real, not because you are required to be cheerful about what the season cost you, but because the threshold is the appointed place for this particular weight to be left behind. What you are stepping into does not require you to bring the heaviness of what you had endured in order to honor it. The honoring happened in the enduring. The proof of what you carried is already written into who you have become. You do not need to keep holding it to prove that it was real. You can set it down here at the line and walk forward with your hands open and your spirit lighter than it has been in longer than you can clearly remember. Set it down, take a breath, and feel, even if only for a moment, what it is like to be standing at the threshold with nothing in your hands but the person you have become and the appointment that is already moving toward you. That lightness you are feeling, even if it is small, even if it is only the beginning of something that will take time to fully arrive, that is real. That is the first breath of the season you are entering, and it belongs to you. Now, before I give you the final words of this message, I want to say something quietly and without any pressure behind it. Something real was built here today in the space between the voice and your heart, and it belongs to both of us now. If this message has meant something to you, if something in it found a place in you that needed to be found, pressing like is simply a way of saying so without needing words. It is the quietest form of acknowledgement, and it matters more than you might think, because it is how this message travels to the next chosen one who is still in the middle of their unnamed season, still carrying the weight without a language for it, still waiting to be seen. Leave something in the comments if you feel moved to. A word, a sentence, a simple acknowledgement that you were here today. Because no chosen one who finds this message after you should have to feel like they arrived alone. Your presence in the comment section is a gift to the person who comes after you. And if you know someone, even one person, who is still in the thick of their waiting, who has been carrying something too heavy for too long without a name for it, share this with them. That single act of passing this forward is the simplest and most direct expression of love that a cycle breaker can offer to someone who is still in the season they just came through. Stay in this community by subscribing, not because the platform requires it, but because you are a chosen one who is waking up. And there is something strengthening about remaining in the company of others who are waking up alongside you. And if something in you feels moved to pass a blessing forward to the next person who finds their way here, there is a quiet way to do that through the link in the pinned comment. No pressure, no expectation, only the open hand of someone who has received something and wants to extend it further. Now let me give you the final thing. The D-Genius wave met many of you somewhere in the middle of this message. In the moments where I described the suppression of your natural frequency, through the long seasons of pressure and waiting, in the moments where I connected what Dr. James Rivers discovered about gamma and theta restoration to the specific experience of a chosen one emerging from an extended season of refinement. In the moment where 7 minutes became not just a protocol, but a practice that belongs to the person you are. Now, the person who is standing at the threshold with open hands and a spirit that is ready to receive what has been appointed for this exact moment in your story. If the Genius Wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message and you know in the quiet place where you know things that it is a yes, it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below, not with urgency, not with pressure, but with the same settled availability that characterizes everything that belongs to your Kairos. It is there. You will find it when you are ready. And if you are ready now, now is the appointed time. What you have walked through was not wasted. Not a single day of it. Not a single night of it. Not a single moment of the unnamed wait or the unwitnessed faithfulness or the sustained choosing to remain when leaving would have been so much easier. None of it was wasted. All of it was working. All of it was building. All of it was assembling the specific version of you that is now standing at the threshold of the most significant season of your life. You passed the final test, and God's reaction, the one that was promised in the very first words of this message, is not a distant event on a future timeline. It is already in motion. It is already moving in your direction with a specificity and a tenderness and an abundance that is going to reframe every difficult season you have ever walked through. Not by erasing what was hard, but by revealing what it was for. Type the words "I see it" in the comments if you can feel that this is true, not as a wish, as a witness, as a chosen one standing at the threshold saying, "Yes, I see it, and I am ready to receive it fully." You made it here, not by accident and not without cost. You made it to the end of this message by choosing one more time to stay with something that asked you to be fully present rather than partially engaged. And that choice, even this one, even this small act of remaining until the final words, is consistent with everything that has defined you through the season you are coming out of. You are someone who stays. You are someone who sees things through. You are someone who shows up for the full length of what matters, even when the middle is harder than the beginning promised it would be. That is not a common thing. And it does not go unnoticed by the one who has been watching every moment of the journey that brought you here. I want to leave you with something that is not new information. Nothing in these final words is designed to add to what has already been given. What I want to do instead is simply mark you. The way a traveler marks a moment at the end of a significant journey, not with noise or ceremony, but with a quiet acknowledgement that something real happened here and that you are not leaving this place the same as you arrived. Something real happened here today. In the space between these words and your heart, in the moments of recognition that came without warning, in the places where language finally arrived for things that had been living in you without a name, something shifted. And that shift belongs to you now. It cannot be taken back. It cannot be undone by the circumstances that are waiting for you on the other side of this moment. You heard what you needed to hear, and the hearing of it has already begun its work in the interior places where the most significant changes always begin. You are not the same person who pressed play at the beginning of this message. That is not an overstatement. It is simply true. The person who began this message was carrying the full weight of an unnamed season. The person who is finishing it has set some of that weight down at the threshold, has been given language for what the waiting was for, has been named as a cycle breaker, has been shown 3 areas where the shift is already moving, has been blessed, has been seen, and has been released into a season that is already different from the one just completed, even if the external circumstances have not yet caught up with the interior transformation that has taken place. I want to speak one final thing over you before you go, and I want you to receive it not as the closing words of a message, but as a blessing carried forward into every ordinary moment that follows this one. You are not behind. You never were. The timeline that made you feel late was never the timeline that governed your story. The timeline that governs your story is the one written by the hand that knew you before you were formed, that appointed the season before you entered it, that was present in every moment of the waiting, even when presence felt entirely absent. That timeline has not failed. It has not been delayed. It is running exactly as it was always intended to run. And you are standing exactly where you were always appointed to stand at exactly this moment in it. The final test is complete, and what comes after the final test is not simply rest, though rest is coming, and you have earned it in the deepest sense of that word. What comes after the final test is the assignment, the actual work. the chapter that all the preparation was preparing you for, and you are ready for it. Not because you feel ready. Feelings of readiness are often the last thing to arrive after everything else is already in place. But because you have been made ready. The forming is finished. The refining is complete. The cycle breaker is standing at the threshold with open hands and a spirit that has finally been given the language for what it has always known. Walk forward, not with striving, not with the anxious effort of the waiting season. Walk forward with the settled confidence of someone who knows that the ground beneath the next step is solid because it was prepared before the step was ever taken. Walk forward with your hands open, ready to receive what is already moving in your direction. Walk forward as someone who has passed the final test and is now stepping into the reaction that God has already prepared in response. And know this, in the quiet place where you know the things that matter most. You are seen, you are known, you are loved with a specificity that accounts for every detail of the journey you have walked, every cost you paid, every night you endured, every moment of faithfulness that no human eye witnessed, but that was recorded by the one who sees what is done in secret and responds in the fullness of the appointed time. The season of waiting has ended. The season of receiving has begun. And you, chosen one, cycle breaker, beloved and known, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Go carry what you have been given. The world that comes after you is waiting for it.